Alright, guys, this is an inevitable situation that was bound to happen, obviously, ever since the League of Nations of British Empire, the Americas, and the Ottoman Empire pretty much supplanted Israel for the Israelis, and not so much for the Arabs, but broadly, this affected the Middle East on a grander scale, not just locally. And, you know, colonialism sort of radicalized people in the within the lower peons, and so we have terrorism, not just because of being destroyed, but just like Hamas, um, we are gonna see the issue with the Houthi situation. So that article I was just on, this article talks about it directly. Okay, so who are the Houthi rebels? What to know about the Yemeni militants attacking ships in the Red Sea. Okay, so basically, before I get to reading this, there's war going on in Yemen at this very moment, like bombing directly in civilian areas, just like Israel was doing, bombing in civilian areas, airstriking anyone, whether it was a journalist or not. So, for weeks, Houthi rebels in Yemen have launched drone and rocket attacks targeting ships in the Red Sea and Bab al-Mandab Strait, a strategic passage uh, that connects the Red Sea and Arabian Sea. On January 11th, the U.S. and British militants, in conjunction with other allies, launched the first strike in response, targeting Houthi weaponry in Yemen after warnings to the group went unheeded. Alright, so these people are generally radicalized due to being lied to uh, broadly for religious reasons and at the same time for reasonable hatred of being destroyed constantly in the Western wars. Um, like the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, they all pretty much helped destroy the Middle East. And this is not to justify these crazy terrorists. They should be stopped, but clearly bombing civilian territory shouldn't be that hard to also talk about without it meaning that, oh, we should just go easy on the terrorists, because that's all anyone extrapolates it as when they don't care about the Middle East, or they know there's terrorists in the area, but when you say protect the civilians, they just hear, oh, so you want us to go easy on the terrorists, because military tactics, they're probably pretty petty, probably aren't thinking broadly about everyone. All right. Who are the Houthi rebels and how many are there? The Houthis are a Shiite Muslim sect with roots that date back centuries in Yemen. Members of the religion are a minority in Yemen, which is predominantly Sunni Muslim, but they are a significant one, numbering in the hundreds of thousands and making up as much as a third of the overall population. Okay, so this is a good thing to sort of segue into. A part of this video, or the next few videos, will actually be genocide happening due to a type of youth bulge that's happening. Specifically, we fearmonger with the youth bulge when it comes to terrorism, because men feel helpless as there's just breeding outside of the family structure because of what we're doing to bombing them so much. And so they're not allowed to function, but they still want to have children, or at most there's women being raped and they don't get a say about what's going on at all. Okay. Despite being minorities in the country, in 2012, Houthi rebels numbering in the low thousands managed to capitalize on unrest in Yemen to build a loyal following in the north of the country. In 2014, they seized the capital Sana'a, sparking the civil war with the Western and Saudi-backed government. That war has continued since, despite limited ceasefires. The report in the Yemen Post from 2017 said the ranks of the rebel militia and administration, which refers to itself as Yemen's government, had swelled to roughly 100,000 people. Did the Houthis control Yemen? The Houthi administration now controls most of Yemen, including the capital Sana'a and the key Red Sea part of Judea. So, gonna be honest, guys, geography is not my strong suit. I feel like that should be fair to mention. Okay. The Western-backed government had been dislocated to the southern port city of Aden, but it also controls the less populated eastern portions of the country. Are the Houthis a terrorist organization? The Houthi movement has not been designated a terrorist organization by the U.S. government since 2021. The Biden administration has tried to walk a thin line between granting the group recognition as a legitimate political faction in hopes of easing the war, while also backing the fight against it. So, on Twitter, I basically heard people saying that this is just like allowing for radical extremism and befriending it. But this is not the case because not everybody in Yemen is a terrorist and radical, but I feel like there's a hard way to explain essentialism and broadly not associating too much while still fighting against the terrorists. That's always a hard thing for people to grapple with, in my opinion. Okay, the veteran diplomatic envoy tasked by President Biden with finding a political solution to Yemen's bloody civil war said for the first time in 2021 that U.S. recognized the Houthi rebels as a limited, legitimate actor, as Washington accepted that both sides in the conflict bore responsibility for the ongoing violence. The remarks by Tim Lenderich were a clear overture toward the Houthi rebels. Quote, no one can wish them away or out of the conflict, so let's deal with the realities that exist on the ground, Lender King said, adding that in his experience the Houthis had spoken about a commitment toward peace in Yemen, and I think there are certain elements within the leadership that favor that, end quote. So that almost sounds edgy, as it might be too naive, and I can see why somebody may think that. The overture failed to bring peace to Yemen, however, and after Hamas' brutal attack on the 7 terror attack on Israel sparked the war in Gaza, the Palestinian group's ideological allies, including the Houthis and Lebanon-based Hezbollah group, both of which are supported by Iran, like Hamas, vowed to back up Hamas. Oh, okay. Well, I forgot about that part. That Houthis were sort of okay. I think I talked about this in a video as I did quick research, so I'm glad that was accurate. Why are the Houthis attacking ships in the Red Sea? The Houthi movement has said its naval operations are being carried out to support the Palestinian people in confronting the aggression and siege on Gaza. A spokesman added in a social media post that the rebel group did not intend the Red Sea attacks as, quote, a show of force nor a challenge to anyone. So I kind of think this is a total lie. And, like, the only way you could see this as not that is if it's, like, some weird religious interpretation. Okay. The Houthi rebels, who have a significant supply of ballistic missiles and Iranian-made attack drones, claim to be targeting ships belonging to Israel or the country's Western allies. U.S. warships in the region have shot down many weapons launched from Yemen over recent weeks, including the Houthis' largest barrage over the drones and missiles launched on January 9th. Alright, some vessels have been hit, but many of the rockets and drones launched from Yemen never reached their intended targets, and it's often not clear what those targets actually were before the weapons are destroyed. Do we really have to think that much into it? They probably don't have the infrastructure and correct apparatus to put things together in a correct way to be a threat necessarily consistently. So I don't think it's just being passive aggressive. Okay. The U.S. government estimates that almost 10% of the world's seaborne petroleum products pass through the Bab Al Manbab Strait in 2017, along with Amarad other goods. The impact of the threat to shipping in the area has already been significant, disrupting the logistics of some of the world's biggest sea cargo lines and oil companies. Oh, yes. I think I read that a Middle Eastern shipping boat was actually going to China to deliver oil, and there's this whole cabal, sort of against the U.S., whether they're being attacked or not. And so I can almost see this as the beginnings of like a type of war, not necessarily World War III, because it's possible that the way the media and the markets and how we're made to see things uh, and look the other direction in the media, it's possible World War III is happening in a different type of way, and the elites know that, but we're not trained to see it in that type of way because we're too nostalgic about other ways of looking and seeing it. That's why I think that, like, World War III could be about hacking accounts, not necessarily about body counts, as China is mostly hacking the world abroad, hacking Dutch for their superconductor technology, as resources become scarcer and scarcer, as U.S. power, or sorry, as world powers become more uh, aggressive towards each other. You know, we're doing less business, and so things are becoming more expensive. Um, and at the same time, like the resource allocation model is failed, and we blame other people when it's obvious that the majority of the wealth is sort of just kind of sitting there. Okay, kind of want to move on because I feel like I'm almost getting off topic. Okay, hold on. What is Operation Prosperity Guardian? On December 18th in Israel, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin announced a new joint military operation aimed at addressing, quote, security challenges in the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, with the goal of ensuring freedom of navigation for all countries and bolstering regional security and prosperity. Austin said the effort, dubbed Operation Prosperity Guardian, would see at least 7 nations join the U.S., including the UK, several European Union allies, along with Bahrain and Canada. The operation goal is to contribute militarily to policing in vital sea passages around Yemen's coastline and responding to attacks from Houthi-controlled Yemen. It was their allies who launched the reprisal attacks on the Houthis on January 11th. Quote, these attacks are reckless, dangerous, and they violate international law, Austin said during a trip to Israel. Quote, this is not just a U.S. issue, this is an international problem, and it deserves an international response. The Guardian operation was created under the guises of existing Combined Task Force 153, which was launched in 2022 with a virtually identical mission. Quote, because it's a coalition of the willing, it's up to individual nations as to which parts of the Combined Maritime Task Force mission they will support. Pentagon Press Secretary Maj Gen Patrick Ryder told reporter last week, quote, we're working through that process right now in terms of which countries will be participating in Task Force 153 and specifically what capabilities and types of support they will provide. Wow, that almost seemed almost a little off topic, but anyways, moving on. Okay, so I think this is a bit obvious, and I don't know why the US wouldn't do this. Like, even if you think they're a form of revolutionary group, terrorists, they seem to just attack indiscriminately despite the broader threat of the U.S. British strings of it that put on are creating Israel, and we know who the the broader threat was, but in times of peace, when these groups start attacking based on history, the media can erase history, make you think this is random, but at the same time, it's not justified to kill innocent civilians. And this is what terrorists do. Like, in terms of an attack against a nation, any American or person from that nation will do to kill them. It's symbolic, unfortunately. And so this is why we can't have terrorism, because even they are probably not being precise if they had their way. This doesn't mean that our allied forces and Israel itself should just be bombing civilian neighborhoods. This At a certain point, it creates the illusion of both sides. So it is very unfortunate that anyone really takes a side and doesn't see this for the moral issue that we have to stop and seeing it broadly historically while not giving up on defending ourselves. Okay. U.S. considers redesignating Houthis as terror group after ship seizure. So this is obvious. I probably read some snippets from that other article that are relevant to this. Okay. Moving on. So, U.S. and U.K. carry out strikes against Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. Now, this is also due to the Houthis attacking the ship in the Red Sea. This is definitely a continuation of that. But our response is, of course, civilian casualties as usual, as it is just symbolic to destroy their numbers. Okay. CNN, the US and UK militaries launched strikes against Houthi targets in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen on Thursday, marking a significant response after the Biden administration and its allies warned that the Iran-backed militant groups would bear the consequences of its attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. U.S. President Joe Biden said he ordered the strikes, quote, in direct response to unprecedented Houthi attacks against international maritime vessels in the Red Sea. Quote, today, at my direction, U.S. military forces, together with the United Kingdom, with the support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Netherlands, successfully conducted strikes against a number of targets in Yemen used by Houthi rebels to endanger freedom of navigation in one of the world's most vital waterways, the president said in a statement released by White House. But we see how strong he is to kind of blow up people that are a threat to us, but he won't ask for the ceasefire when we're a threat to other people. But of course, there's the media giving us a snippet of what happened to Israel that day on October 7th, and so we only see terrorist group did thing to Israel, and it optically just made sense to attack back. But realistically, we know it's not just attacking back, it's an overblown response, and body counts are meaningless. This shouldn't have anything to do with who killed more. Okay. Biden added that he will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect our people and free flow of international commerce as necessary. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said on Friday the strikes were an act of self-defense, adding that the aim was, quote, to de-escalate tensions and to restore stability to the region, which is a weird way of doing that. U.S. and coalition of forces struck over 60 targets with more than 100 precision-guided munitions at 16 Iranian-backed Houthi militant locations. U.S. Air Forces Center Command LT Gen Alex Grinkowicz said the Houthi assets included command and control nodes, munitions depots, launching systems, production facilities, and air defense radar systems, he added. The strikes, which have been commenced by several leaders across the Middle East, killed 5 and wounded 6 others, according to the rebels' military spokesman. Ya Sarez, who said the airstrikes would not deter further Houthi attacks on shipping. Multi-pronged operation. The US and UK strikes are a sign of a growing international alarm over the threat to one of the world's most critical waterways. For weeks, the US had sought to avoid direct strikes on Yemen because of the risk of escalation in a region already simmering with tension as the Israel-Hamas war continues. But the ongoing Houthi attacks on international shipping compelled the coalition to act. Though the U.S. has carried out strikes against Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria since the outbreak of the war in Gaza. Exactly. We're constantly in the Middle East, and it makes it easier to do that as Israel as the proxy to defend. As long as they're there to defend, we have an excuse in some vague sense to do what we're doing in the Middle East. Now, even if Israel wasn't in danger, I'm pretty sure that would be on the table to discuss as an excuse. So essentially, this is just war on terror 2. Whether it's justified in certain moments of terrorist extremism or not, I'm not justifying, or I'm not saying that you shouldn't defend yourself. Definitely. But we don't need a 20-year war. We don't need to be embroiled in this situation more. Like millions of people died in Afghanistan and Iraq due to the Bush administration. And of course, Trump helped with that. But in terms of the New World Order beginning, Trump was not the first fascist. It was glassing the Middle East constantly by the U.S. forces for the most part. But I would separate what Trump is doing and what's happening in our country right now. I wouldn't compare that to destroying the Middle East, I guess. But I don't want to devalue other people because I'm not being bombed. That just seems very cruel. Okay. The strikes are... Sorry, where was I? Thank you for continuing to listen, guys, if you still are. Though the U.S. has carried out strikes against Iranian... Okay. The strikes were from fighter jets and Tomahawk missiles. More than a dozen Houthi targets were fired on by missiles fired from air, surface, and sub-platforms that were chosen for their ability to degrade the Houthis' continued attacks on vessels in the Red Sea, a U.S. official told CNN. The USS Florida, a guided missile submarine that crossed into the Red Sea on November 23rd, was part of the attack on Yemen, according to a second U.S. official. The USS Philippine Sea guided missile cruiser and 2 Ira Burke class guys. Okay, so basically there's just constant division among the region, and like this is just going to be mass genocide as usual. Like I think that's what this all amounts to, is perceived danger, real danger, and resource allocation, resource hoarding. The fact that America can't just pay more people to do everything at home. Instead, it uses people abroad to do so. And so that's why America might topple if all of its ships are attacked in this situation. Like, this is actually very dangerous for anyone. Like, for me, for broadly speaking, just in general. All right. So, this is definitely not a good situation, guys. Okay, I will see you in the next one.